Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Mental Toughness and Body Show. My name is Rob Evans, and I'm your weight loss coach, health strategist, and internationally published author, helping take your life and your business, your health, fitness, mindset, and body from where you are right now to where it is that you want to be. And I've got a really fantastic guest with me today. It's Ian Ash, who is a business coach based in Melbourne, Australia. Hi, Ian. Thanks for joining.
No, my pleasure, Rob. How are you doing this afternoon?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Now, Ian, we have had some recent discussions around challenges that our clients are facing and business and so forth. And I thought what is really topical for us here in Melbourne is we're in the last month of our winter season. We've got colds, we've got flus, we've got a lot of global disruption to supply chains. We've got staffing issues by virtue of supply chains, colds, flus, and COVID. And it's having a really dramatic impact on business, particularly small business and their mindset. And I'm starting to see for the first time in the 13 years that I've been in running my own business people wanting to step away from their businesses altogether. So I guess in opening up, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with your coaching clients.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Robert. And I agree with you. There are difficult times being experienced by many businesses at the moment, and probably more difficult times ahead for those as well. I'd say a lot of the issues that we're currently seeing, those external ones, like the issues we're seeing in Europe and indeed in this region as well, are accentuators of problems that still are typically seen by many businesses day to day. One of the ones I see probably most prolifically is the lack of available time for business leaders. And it's an apparent thing. They'll believe there is no time because we all have 24 hours a day, 7 days in a week. And the problem with that, it's insidious, because if they don't have time to do the important things like maintain relationships with family, do things outside of work, or to think strategically about their business, then a lot of these issues compound. So some of the things that you're seeing externally will start to accentuate some of those problems that are typically there for most businesses anyway.
So one of the things that I observed during COVID, I'd like to get your thoughts on this, where I found that COVID's magnified things. So if you're a happy, successful, driven person, then it magnified you and made you happier, more driven. I mean, I'm not, putting down the fact that a lot of people have lost their lives and so forth. I'm talking about, mindset and that kind of stuff. And so if you were, so like what you were just saying there, if you were time poor and you were always busy and you is maybe struggling with your physical health, your mental health, whatever, then COVID magnified that for people and made it so big that whatever they were before, it just got bigger, and now they're in a world of hurt. And so what I'm seeing now is that, we've come out of lockdown and we've been the most locked down city in the world. But those issues that are existing in business at the moment, rather than it just being, it's just one more thing that we've got to solve, it's like it's becoming so big and people are becoming fatigued and burnt out that they're like, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, well, there's some very significant things that have arisen as a result of COVID. It's very much shifted people's perspectives. Prior to COVID, working from home was something that was not really well embraced by most businesses, and I think predominantly for reasons of trust and consistency. So it wasn't clear necessarily to many business owners that those businesses were going to get the level of productivity, believing that there'd be more distractions at home. And I think COVID proved that in practice that wasn't actually the case. There were many benefits to people working from home, like less time traveling, less cars on the road. And actually, I'd suggest that probably most people were more productive at home. The issue that's derived from that, though, is that as they come back into the workplace, they found they actually quite liked working from home. They liked the flexibility it gave them. Start at various times and finish at times that suited them. And what we're seeing in the recruitment space a lot is a bit, especially because of the scarcity of skilled staff at the moment, is people basically feeling that they can and want to make greater demands in that respect. So many people who are looking for new jobs are saying things like, I want to be able to work 2 days a week from home. Or going
Yes.
back to the existing employer saying, I now want to work 2 days from home because I enjoyed it and I think it was fine. And one of the big issues for employers at the moment is how to attract, but more importantly, how to retain their staff, because it is such a difficult market at the moment. Again, brought on by COVID, because we had the borders shut, so we weren't getting the level of immigration that we had in previous years, therefore not more skills coming into the marketplace. So as you correctly said, that has accentuated the existing problems again.
I did hear just recently, and I can't quote the source, but I can't recall it, but something like now we're starting to see a 30% reduction in productivity at home from people working from home, because the complacency is set in. It's like, yeah, they want to work from home because they can, oh, look, I'll just duck out and I'll do a load of washing. I'll just duck out for 10 minutes to do the shopping. No one's doing shopping in 10 minutes. I'll just, I'll just go and cook dinner, whatever. Yeah. So like hours a day are now coming out. And so they're starting to do some studies around this, and that's some early signs of it, that it's starting to, people are just dropping their focus and their work ethic and falling into some bad habits. So I'm just interested in, obviously with the types of clients that you're coaching, you're coaching business owners, executives, that sort of stuff. What would you say would be, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3, the top biggest challenges that you're seeing in our environment at the moment?
I think that the top one I'd have to say is back to where I started our discussion in terms of that time management aspect, because what that leads to is a reactive approach to issues that come up, including how do I retain and attract great staff. It's very much a reactive response. And what typically happens in that case is the first thing people will do is they'll go, I've got to pay more. That may be true. Some markets, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You have to be able to pay the going rate. But it's actually not the reason that people typically stay. Money tends not to be a motivator. If people are really motivated by money, what will happen is they'll come on board and they'll find something else down the line that pays even further, and so they move on. So businesses really do have to think much more carefully now about how to keep their staff engaged. And that's not just a question of working from home. Part of it is, it's not just a question of salary. Part of it is, it's also a question, I think, of actually correctly and adequately challenging staff. And this is something that I'm not sure is generally appreciated. If you look at studies done by Gallup in the US, in the UK and Australia, they'll typically tell you over the last few years, there's a pretty steady level of staff disengagement, as they call it. 70% of the staff typically disengage. What that means is, they're not out to sink the company, but they'll only do what they need to do and not much more. About 14%, I think, who are actively disengaged. That's working against the best interest of the company, like going off and doing the washing when they're supposed to be doing work. So there's only a small proportion, 16% on average, that are actively engaged. That you have to look at that as a underlying problem that has been pervasive. It's always been there. And as you said right at the start, I think it's been accentuated by current conditions and COVID. So the question needs to be, well, how do we actually engage our staff? And I really believe that a lot of it is we don't challenge people enough. We don't give them sufficient responsibility so that they know what they're doing is worthwhile. It's a big difference between being told to do something and being given responsibility for something, because in the latter, you can choose about how the result is achieved. In the former, you just get told. Well, most people, I don't think, like to be told. They like to feel that they're responsible for something, they create something that they can be proud of. And that, for me, is one of the key reasons for lack of engagement, is they're not advised, they aren't given sufficient information about why what they're doing matters, why it's worthwhile. And it's especially true for millennials. They will stay with the company if they believe what they're doing is worthwhile. So we've got to find ways to get that message across. That takes time, that takes thought. And back to the major issue there that you asked about is time management. The second thing I think that people are struggling with right now is probably uncertainty about the future.
Yes.
That breeds, that lack of confidence means that people don't tend to provision or plan properly for it. And again, it's a pervasive issue. Many businesses I see, when I first talk to them, I ask them about their strategy. Many will say they don't have one. Those that do, I ask them, where is it written down? And they'll go, it's up here. If it's not written down, it actually doesn't exist.
Yes.
So there's no formal plan for where the business is going, where it needs to get to over the next year or two. There's no strategic focus for the business, lack of direction, which doesn't engage people. The other thing that's very commonplace and still surprises me, there's no financial plan, there's no budget. And people, if they want to find out how they're doing financially, would have a look at the bank statement and say, well, I've got to seem to have enough money in the bank at the moment, forgetting about BAS payments and other debts that they may owe as well. You wouldn't dream of building a house without a plan. Why would you dream of building a business without a plan as well? And it's just something that I find is generally missing, and it's accentuated when you have pressures like this, when actually demand that businesses should be looking at a plan to navigate through the difficulties that they're currently seeing.
Yeah, look, I love those points, Ian. Picking up on your first one there, what would you say is... I've lost my question in my thinking.
Time management. The first point.
It's around. Oh, that's right. Thank you for the prompt. What I was thinking is, so when you're working with the people and you can see that, one of the big problems is that you're not engaging your staff, or you're not challenging them, etc. So are the people that you're meeting with, do they get that? Or is it like, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't realize that? Because they're so, like some business owners that are so caught up in the detail that they don't take a stand back and say, I don't understand why I'm losing so many staff, or why I'm having trouble keeping them, etc.
100%. That's exactly what's going on. It's like when you're really, really busy, the thing that you want to do is to get the problem off your desk. You typically won't take the step back and go, I wonder why this is happening. This is the third person who's given it notice in the last month. Why is this happening? What do we need to do? It's just, okay, there's another person I've got to find a replacement for. So there's a difference in how you respond and react to things when you have time to think about it. When you're dealing with important and urgent stuff, you just have to deal with it. You have no choice. But great business leaders tend to actually spend most of their time, as Stephen Covey noted, working on important stuff, non-urgent stuff. And the way that happens is they empower their staff through greater responsibility. And many things are written down. So I'll go back to that earlier point. How many businesses do you know have written a position description for a CEO?
Yes.
Yet to find one, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And the result of that is the CEO, with all due respect, they don't typically know what they're supposed to be doing. What do they focus on? Stuff they like, not the stuff they know best. That's the comfort zone. If they don't like looking at the financials under pressure, they probably won't look at the financials. It's the kind of thing that Michael Gerber talked about in the E-Myth. It's a great book to highlight why a lot of small businesses fail. And it's that lack of the entrepreneurial perspective that every business owner needs to spend time on to look more critically at what's actually happening in the business. What do we need to do to try to address those problems? And time is often given as a reason why it's not done, but it's simply not a question of priority.
So then how do you change someone's mindset to say, well, hang on, you're focusing on the wrong thing? How do you get that exec or that business owner to say, well, hang on, you've got to look at challenging your staff. You've got to get the position descriptions. You've got to put your time into this area. How do you go about getting that change to occur?
It's a really good question, Rob, because if I look at how that happens, it usually occurs under two circumstances. One is the business is really suffering, and they got to a point and they go, I've got to get out of this hamster wheel. The same thing keeps happening. I don't know how to get out of it. And they need a circuit breaker. And I think that's kind of how I see my role, is to provide that circuit breaker and simply ask some of those questions. Where is your role defined? What do you think you need to address as a priority? Where is your budget? Where's the direction, strategic plan for the business? And as you start to ask those questions, it starts to become clear that those things might actually matter. And the other people I tend to find in that space as well, not only those necessarily doing it tough, but some businesses may be doing pretty well, but they've plateaued. They've got to a level where they're doing okay, but they're typically still really busy, but they they're worried about taking the business to the next level because their time increases proportionately with business growth. So there's a reluctance to grow too quickly, thinking that actually this might actually cause me work. The reality is, as you start to focus in on what people's real responsibilities are, and they get more clearly delineated through the business, especially the CEO and the leadership teams, their workload actually goes down. And the reason for that is they find themselves owning those particular roles and systemizing the parts of it, so that it operates more efficiently and more effectively, and other people start to pick up more of that load. So that pushing responsibility down means if you do have to increase staffing, it's typically done at the lower levels of the organization, not at the top levels. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, and you can promote from within as well. So there's a lot of reasons to do that, but people will find it difficult generally to believe they've got the time to do it.
Well, that's the thing. My next question was going to be, essentially, we're talking about you've got to work on the business rather than in it. And so you're talking to that person and they say, yeah, I get that I need to work on it, but I have such problems with my staff shortages right now. I will get to that. So how do you manage that situation where somebody's saying, well, look, because often it's especially the small business owner, they might have to go back on the tools or really throw themselves back into the business to fill a hole because, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 5 staff have got COVID or whatever, and they have to be back on the floor. And that's happening all the time, and they get caught up in the detail. So what's your approach to the business owner that's going through that?
Yeah, that's a really legitimate question, and you have to look at what reasonably can be done. But when I do some time management training with clients, as I did just last week up in Albury, the first question I ask everybody is, who's got enough time to do everything they want to do? How many hands go up?
None.
And one person did one time and misheard the question, so I'd still take that to zero. So the reality is that effectively work expands to fill the time. People may not agree with that because there's always something to do. Of course there is.
Absolutely.
So the approach is one of prioritization. That's the only way things get done, is to prioritize, well, what do I actually have to do and by when? And what often gets prioritized out are those important tasks. People just focus on the urgent and important. And if they have to be done, you can't tell a customer who's got a major issue, leave it for a couple of weeks, I'll come back to you. If their business is stuck because of it, you just can't. So it may well be the case that sometimes people, top guy or senior leadership team members have to roll up their sleeves and get stuck in. But if that's happening all the time, I'd suggest there's something wrong with the structure of the business. Yeah. And then it goes back to clarity about what the roles are individually supposed to do. Now, in the situation where the company may have lost some senior staff, the way to deal with that, I'd suggest, is to have people take on certain of those roles, but time box it. I'm going to allocate, let's say there's no sales manager in the business. It's a small business. The CEO has to step into the sales role, step into it for a few hours a week, time box it and work out what's the most I'm going to get out of this time. But don't let it spread into everything else, and don't let
your function.
It's really a question of discipline. I'm going to allocate this time for this task, this time for this task, and this time. And if you spend time thinking about that, which is effectively a prioritization activity, that's how the efficiency improves, because you start to realize that if I spend a couple of hours here on important, non-urgent stuff, it's going to head off at the pass some of the other stuff that might become urgent and important and therefore more difficult to deal with.
Fantastic points. I don't think we put enough emphasis on prioritizing. I actually recorded a video today saying one of the tips that I have to set myself up for success is the night before I plan what are my top 5 priorities for the next day. And then I schedule those in my calendar. So what I know is going to sleep, I'm driven and I'm aware of what I need to get up and do as my number 1 priority tomorrow morning, because I put them in 1 to 5. And so you get out of bed and you know that, okay, this is what I'm focusing on, rather than, okay, you get up, you're tired, you bum around, whatever. And then you say, all right, I'm at my computer. What am I going to do today? All right, I better work on this. And already you've lost like half an hour or an hour, as opposed to bang, I know I'm working on this today. I've got the time blocked out here, bang, done. We don't do enough of it. And since I've been doing that now for the top 5 has been recent, but I've done sort of 3 my top 3 for the last couple of years now. And what I find is I just progress more. I'm getting more done. And rather than making up excuses, I don't have the time, it's like, well, I've made the time because I've now said that this is what I'm going to do. And what I've also found is I've got a 90-day rolling strategy document where if I come up with ideas or whatever, okay, it's going on there. And if I don't do the things daily and push myself to say, okay, this is a priority today, that stuff just remains a dream.
Yes.
It remains on that list and never goes anywhere. And I've noticed just this week, oh, that's something that I had on my list a while ago, and I've now brought it to the fore. And guess what? I've done it.
Yeah.
And all of those little things add up to big success in the long run. And I think you've hit that right on the head about the time management, the priorities and stuff. I think that's, really well articulated.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. That reminds me, you're talking there about a Japanese proverb that goes, vision without action is a daydream, action without vision is a nightmare. And that really neatly encapsulates, I think, what you're talking about. And what your approach there, I think, is eminently reasonable. And more than that, it's actually a stress reliever, because if you're stressed and go to a doctor, a good doctor will ask you, what is it you don't feel in control of? Because stress is a symptom, it's not actually an underlying issue.
Yeah.
The biggest panacea or antidote to stress, I think, is a plan, which is what you've done.
Yes.
Okay, this is what I plan to get done this day. And a great, I think, approach is not to overcommit, keep it reasonable and realistic, and get in the habit of achieving rather than coming up with 15 good reasons why you didn't. Once that mindset shifts to one of incremental improvement, as opposed to 15 good reasons why things didn't get done and excusing yourself, things do start to shift. And I think that's important in a business too.
And it's a great example of physiologically how it worked for me last night, because I was in bed and I fell asleep, and then, something woke me up, and I'm like, well, why can't I get back to sleep? And it's like, I used to ask people in my old corporate audit days, I'd say, what keeps you awake at night? And I'm like, I'm lying there saying, this is keeping me awake. And I'm like, why is that? I haven't done my 5 priorities for tomorrow. And so I thought, okay, so I grabbed my phone and I wrote them all down, made sure my calendar was right. And guess what? Then I fell asleep because I knew I felt, I suppose in some ways, a bit anxious that I hadn't planned out my day for the next day, and I'd planned the last few days and done so well. And now I knew that, well, I know that makes me successful. If I don't do it tonight, then it's not going to work.
100%.
My cat.
The unknown is a stressful place to be.
Get involved again. My cat smooching the computer again. One of the second points you were talking about there was about the uncertainty. Where do you think? Like, I can think of a whole range of things that are causing uncertainty at the moment. We've got, the lowest in unemployment here since 1978. Inflation's been out of control since probably the 90s. We've got the war in Ukraine. Before hitting record here, we were talking about the pending possible war with Taiwan, China, et cetera. I don't know whether people are starting to go there too much yet, because it's starting to hit the frontline media again now. But what are you seeing as people's main stressor in terms of uncertainty? Obviously, we've got the global supply chain issues and staffing and stuff, but what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think staffing, as we've talked about, but I think the perennial issue of financials, the prospect of interest rates going up, therefore inflation going up, the other way around, inflation going up, therefore interest rates going up, increased wage demands, and then what does that mean in terms of what I need to be charging for my products and services? One of the things I do often see is an inherent reluctance, especially of SMEs, to put up prices. They don't want to be seen to be gouging, as it were, but it isn't gouging. If you look at what's actually happened over the past few years, prices have gone up, and 3 or 5% compounded every year can pretty soon add up to a significant amount. I can remember working with one business who, if you don't have your finger on the pulse in this, you can let things ride for years, decades even. And this particular business had not put its prices up on a certain product since 1985. They're effectively paying customers to take it away. So it's about having that data. It's about having the systems in place so that when things do change like that, you can forecast to predict what the likely impact is on your business. And as I was saying earlier about the client that I met with this morning, understanding what that means to their business, and then going to talk to their customers and suppliers about what they need to do to mitigate the risks and problems they're seeing, but at the same time being cognizant and aware of the fact that they're going to have these issues as well. So you go in with a win-win mindset as opposed to I'm just going to get what I need at all costs. And that's when I think relationships come to the fore. The whole COVID thing has showed that Zoom works, but at the end of the day, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And although you can do a lot by Zoom, and I'm a massive fan of it, at the end of the day, I think it's those face-to-face meetings that create and build those relationships, which you can then draw on if need be when times get tough collectively.
Yes.
I don't think that's ever going to go away.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. There's certainly a hunger for that face-to-face interaction again now, I think. I mean, we're seeing it, I guess, in a big way, in more of a social context. People are wanting to get together for sporting events and for entertainment, concerts, and that kind of thing. Not so much in the learning space yet. I'm not seeing a lot of, like big conferences and that kind of stuff yet. There's just not a huge appetite for that just yet. But you're right. You can't beat, the face-to-face interaction. I do love that. I mean, you and I mean, we could be doing this in person, but we are doing it via Zoom. I do love the convenience and how we can make better use of our time. It's something that I've been very conscious of over these last couple of years. Just how do we become more, faster, better, more efficient, really. So,
I think that stems from the fact that you and I have met face to face on multiple occasions, and so that's enabled us to just view this as a natural extension of the relationship that we've already to an extent built, I think.
And look, one of the sorry, finish.
I was just going to say, it's where it's done for the first time, it can be a little bit more problematic. It's not impossible, it just takes longer. And I think sometimes we overlook the information that's transferred through body language and just that proximity that occurs when two people get together.
One of my big priorities for this year has been around relationships, business relationships, and spending time every single day, 7 days a week, to build and nurture, grow, relationships. And that's how you and I met, because I stepped back into, B&I, and we've got 50 people in the room, 51, I think, people in the room there now. All people, like-minded people that want to grow their businesses and so forth. And that wouldn't have happened without probably COVID and my way of thinking to, I want to become a better person, and we're better together.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So this has really been fantastic, Ian. I really appreciate your time, and I want to be, gracious and aware of how much time we're spending here. So we'll just finish in a couple of minutes. I wanted to ask you, say, over the last couple of years, what have you learned about yourself and your own business, and how you've adapted, changed, and, your pathway forward?
That's a really good question. I think I've learned to become a little bit calmer and a little bit more patient, I think.
Okay. You don't strike me as being somebody that's not patient. I think it's the English accent.
No, I can be. I am, as you know, Rob, I am passionate about seeing results, and I can get frustrated when I see businesses doing what, to my mind, is getting in the way of their own progress. And
same behaviors that don't reap results.
Correct. And it's because my passion is seeing them succeed. If they succeed, that's the satisfaction I get for what I do. So if I know that there's things getting in the way of that, and I'm trying to help and support get those things out of the way, doesn't always happen. And I can still get a bit fired up from that, but I've probably got a little bit more tolerant. I don't know if it's COVID that's helped that or not, but I think you just have to get a bit more philosophical about things. And I like the Alcoholics Anonymous phrase here, God give me the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to distinguish between the two. That's an extremely powerful quote, I think, and one I'm still trying to live up to day by day.
Yeah, nicely said. One of the things that I've noticed with people generally in the work that I do is I spend a lot of my time working in the health and fitness industry, and prior to like 2.5 years ago, so say pre-COVID, people were coming in to me and saying, I want to lose weight. That's the first thing that they say. Oh, I want to lose weight, and yeah, these are some of the other things that I want to achieve. Now people are coming in, and look, we know that like 70% of like people in Australia, in the US, are considered overweight or obese. But they're not coming in leading with, I want to lose weight. They're coming in with, I want to be healthier. I want to have a sustainable lifestyle. And yeah, I would like to lose some weight. But it's not the first thing they say anymore. And so it's interesting what COVID has done to people's thinking. And you're saying about, being calmer and so forth. And I think people have realized that like COVID has magnified things for them. And if they were, on a downward trajectory with their health before, and it's been magnified, then now they're saying, do you know what? I'm sick of doing the Uber Eats diet or the, this or that. They want to do something that's sustainable. And they're, for the first time, thinking about their health and energy and wanting it to be more sustainable. So I find that really refreshing, because that's my approach in not doing diets and crash things like that. You want it to be sustainable for people. So I think I like the change that people are coming back with. And yeah, I'm certainly noticing.
And I think that's really important as well. And you are seeing it in businesses. There's definitely been, over the last year or two, even probably just a bit before COVID, there's a greater focus on health and well-being in business. So it used to be about quality and process. Then it was all about customers. Then it was about the staff. I'm not saying that these things aren't still important, but there's kind of a shift in focus. And then more recently, it was about sustainability, and that's still important. But I'd say the most recent one of all is about employers caring for their staff health and well-being. And that's where I think people like yourselves, Rob, play a vitally important role, because there's clearly a linkage between physical fitness and mental fitness. So it's actually in employers' interests to make sure that their staff are physically fit as well. And I think that connection is only going to become more and more clearly defined as we go forward. So you're in a great place, I think.
And and for themselves as well. I say to every business owner that comes to me, I say, I guarantee you that you'll be more profitable by putting yourself like bringing your health and fitness focus up to number one. Because you'll be more focused, you'll be more energized, you'll get more done, you'll be more creatively thinking, you'll be more strategic. You'll just be more productive, and you just get more done, more energy, you get more of everything done. And I think that's really exciting. And you've added so much value here today. I know we could keep talking over and over, but I'll have to do another, maybe a podcast or two more down the track, because you've, I really love your approach to your coaching your clients, and the results that you're getting is really fantastic. I did want to give you an opportunity to say, because just like me, you can work all around the globe. How can people get in touch with you? And maybe give your plug a bit of a book. Did I say you plug a bit of a book? Yes. Your book, a bit of a plug as well. It's a great book, which I've only just started reading.
Thank you. Yeah, so I actually have a copy here, just in case.
Nice. From Passions to Profit.
That's right. I'm proud of it, but because of the fact that I know people have told me they use it as a reference point, which is what was intended. But thank you, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure being part of this, and thank you for inviting me. So a good place to start is to go to the website, www.ombs.com.au, or contact me on my mobile, 0418 366 418, or email address, which is Ian Ash, no dots, all lowercase, at ombs.com.au.
And how do people get a copy of your book?
They can. It is on Amazon, but probably just to contact me direct. Then I can personally sign it.
Which is always special coming from the author. I know we've exchanged books. So what I will do, Ian, is I'll put those links below this podcast so that people can easily with one click, get in touch with you. Thanks so much for your time today. It's been a breath of fresh air. Recently being acquainted with you, and I'm sure we're going to do some great things together as well. So thanks so much for your time today, Ian. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, Rob. Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.